Michael had always dreamed big. From the moment he stepped into the world of business, he chased numbers, deals, and opportunities with a relentless drive. Every achievement, every milestone, every dollar earned seemed to bring him closer to the life he had imagined. His friends and colleagues admired him. His social media overflowed with symbols of success, and the world saw him as a model of accomplishment. Yet, deep inside, Michael felt an emptiness he could not ignore, a quiet whisper that no amount of wealth could silence. Despite the mansion, the luxury cars, and the high-profile lifestyle, something essential was missing. The late nights spent working, the countless meetings, and the sacrifices he made at home had built a tower of success that felt hollow. Michael realized that he had been chasing money as the ultimate goal, instead of using it as a tool to live a meaningful life. His relationships, health, and personal joys had quietly slipped away, buried under spreadsheets, contracts, and endless ambition. It was in one of these reflective moments that Michael began questioning everything he had believed about success. Could life be about more than achievements and bank balances? Could he reclaim the parts of himself he had ignored along the way? This was the turning point, the moment when wealth no longer defined him, and the search for true purpose began. If you want to discover Michael's journey from emptiness to meaning, and learn the lessons that transformed his life, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the rest of his story. Dive in with us and explore what it really means to live a life full of purpose and fulfillment. After the restless nights and hollow victories, Michael found himself on a quiet evening scrolling through articles on philosophy and lifestyle, searching for something he could not quite name. It was then that he stumbled upon a concept from the Okinawan Islands, a place famed for the long, vibrant lives of its residents. The term Ikigai caught his attention, a word that did not translate easily, but whose meaning whispered of a profound truth. It was the reason to wake up every morning, a purpose that transcended wealth, recognition, or material achievement. Michael was intrigued. The idea that life could be guided by something deeper than profit or social status was both foreign and strangely comforting. He began reading about the Okinawans who lived not just long lives but lives imbued with connection, meaning, and joy, even in the midst of daily hardships. They worked, they laughed, they helped one another, but none of it revolved solely around accumulation or personal gain. Instead, their actions were guided by an inner compass, a quiet sense of purpose that gave every task, every interaction, a significance beyond the ordinary. It was in these stories that Michael first understood how he had been living like a man chasing shadows, mistaking the weight of his bank account for the weight of a life well lived. Gradually, he began to see his own life through a new lens. The meetings that had once felt like triumphs now seemed like empty rituals. The bonuses and accolades, while impressive, felt disconnected from any deeper sense of fulfillment. Michael realized that he had been pursuing success as if it were an end in itself. But Ikigai suggested that true satisfaction came when one's skills, passions, values, and the needs of the world intersected. It was not simply about doing what he loved, nor was it about what could bring him prestige or comfort. It was about contributing to something larger than himself while honoring the parts of himself that had long been ignored. This revelation did not come with immediate answers, but it sparked an awakening. Michael began to examine the parts of his life that brought genuine joy, the moments that made him feel alive and present, the work that, even without recognition, made a difference. He started small, carving out time to mentor young entrepreneurs, to volunteer at local community projects, and to pursue creative ideas he had shelved in the name of efficiency and profit. Each act, though modest, brought a sense of alignment he had never experienced before, a quiet resonance that contrasted sharply with the noise of his previous ambitions. As weeks turned into months, Michael noted subtle shifts in his perspective. The pressure to constantly achieve for the sake of status diminished, replaced by a patient curiosity about what he could offer to the world that was uniquely his. He began to connect more deeply with colleagues, family, and friends, noticing the ways in which shared purpose could transform ordinary interactions into meaningful experiences. Even failures took on a new dimension. Setbacks were no longer humiliating marks on a ledger, but lessons that clarified his understanding of what truly mattered. Michael's journey toward Ikigai was not about abandoning ambition, but about reframing it. Money, once an obsession, became a tool to support meaningful endeavors, not the measure of his worth. Success was no longer defined by the eyes of others, but by a quiet inner satisfaction that came from living in harmony with his values and passions. Each morning he woke with a renewed sense of direction, aware that his life was no longer dictated by external pressures, but by the alignment of purpose, action, and contribution. Through embracing Ikigai, Michael discovered that fulfillment was not a distant destination but a living, evolving process, a rhythm of intention and presence that infused every aspect of his life with depth and clarity he had never known before. As Michael immersed himself more deeply in the lessons of Ikigai, a stark realization began to settle over him, one that he could no longer ignore. The lavish office, the impressive bank statements, and the accolades he had once believed defined success now felt hollow, like the trappings of a life lived out of balance. For years, he had been chasing financial milestones with a single-minded intensity, convinced that wealth would bring security, respect, and perhaps even happiness. Yet, in the quiet hours when the emails stopped and the phone calls faded into silence, he felt a gnawing emptiness, a subtle but persistent ache that no achievement could soothe. It was then that the truth became unavoidable. In the pursuit of outward success, he had lost sight of what had always mattered most: his family, his health, and the fragile, irreplaceable moments of personal life that gave life meaning. Michael's mind wandered back to evenings spent at the office instead of at the dinner table, milestones of his children's lives he had missed, and the laughter of friends and family that he had put aside in the name of productivity. He recalled the long stretches when exercise and proper rest were sacrificed, replaced with meetings and deadlines that, in hindsight, seemed insignificant in the grand tapestry of life. The irony struck him with painful clarity. His original purpose, the reason he had embarked on this journey of ambition, was to protect and care for his loved ones. Yet in striving to secure their future materially, he had neglected their present, and in the process, had neglected himself. The very relationships and health he had aimed to safeguard were fraying under the weight of his obsession. The recognition of this loss was both humbling and clarifying. Michael began to see how easily one could be seduced by the allure of numbers and titles, how ambition without grounding could warp priorities and blind a person to the richness of everyday life. He realized that Ikigai was not a distant ideal or a luxury reserved for those with free time. It was a framework for reclaiming balance, for weaving purpose into the fabric of daily existence. True fulfillment, he understood, required aligning one's actions not only with personal talents and passions, but also with the commitments and responsibilities that defined one's humanity. The neglect of his family and health was not merely a side effect of ambition, it was a signal, a warning that life's most essential elements could not be postponed indefinitely without cost. Motivated by this insight, Michael began to take deliberate steps to restore what had been overlooked. He arranged evenings to reconnect with his children, to share stories, to laugh at their jokes, and to listen with genuine attention. He prioritized his health, returning to routines of exercise and mindful eating, recognizing that vitality was not a commodity to be earned but a foundation for everything else. He reached out to friends and relatives he had drifted from, rebuilding connections with the understanding that shared presence mattered far more than any superficial success. Each reconnection brought subtle shifts, a sense of life becoming fuller and richer, the colors brighter than the cold glow of a computer screen or the sterile satisfaction of financial gain. As weeks passed, Michael realized that reclaiming these neglected areas of life did not diminish his professional achievements. Rather, it gave them context and depth. Money and recognition became tools to support a life lived with awareness, empathy, and care, rather than the sole purpose of existence. His journey toward Ikigai had revealed a profound truth, that success without balance is a fragile illusion, and that the truest measure of a life well lived is not what is accumulated, but how one nurtures the people, health, and moments that give life its enduring value. In embracing this awareness, Michael finally began to feel a sense of harmony, a quiet satisfaction that had eluded him in years of relentless striving. And he understood that protecting and cherishing what truly mattered was not a detour from ambition, but the heart of it. In the months that followed, Michael's life began to shift in ways he had once believed impossible, a transformation that was gradual but deeply profound, rooted not in grand gestures but in the deliberate choices he made each day. He started with small, intentional moments: early morning walks with his daughter, where they shared stories and laughter that had been absent for years, and quiet evenings with his wife, not discussing schedules or obligations, but simply savoring the presence of one another. These moments, once taken for granted or postponed, began to anchor him in the rhythm of life he had long neglected. Slowly, the walls that ambition had erected around his heart began to soften, and he discovered that connection was not something that could be forced, but cultivated, nurtured with patience, attention, and love. As he re-engaged with his parents, he found layers of wisdom and warmth that had been overshadowed by the pursuit of career milestones. Conversations once rushed or absent became opportunities to listen, to honor their experiences, and to share his own vulnerabilities without the pretense of invincibility. In the process, Michael began to confront and embrace the parts of himself he had ignored: the fears, the regrets, and the quiet longings that had been buried beneath years of relentless striving. These introspective moments were neither dramatic nor sensational, but they were transformative, offering him a clearer understanding of his values and the importance of living in harmony with them. Health, which had long been sacrificed on the altar of productivity, became a pillar of his renewed life. Exercise and mindful nutrition were no longer obligations but acts of respect toward his body, a recognition that vitality was necessary not only for achievement but for the quality of every experience. From laughter with his daughter to meaningful work that aligned with purpose, work itself took on a new dimension, evolving from a relentless chase for recognition to a pursuit of meaningful impact, where effort was measured not merely in numbers or titles, but in the difference it made in the lives of others and in the satisfaction of contributing to something greater than himself. Faith and community, once sidelined as peripheral concerns, became integral threads in Michael's evolving narrative. He attended gatherings that nurtured spiritual reflection and engaged in acts of service that connected him with the broader human experience, reinforcing a sense of belonging that had been absent in years dominated by personal ambition. These practices did not erase past neglect, but they created a network of support and purpose that helped sustain the equilibrium he sought. A reminder that life was most fulfilling when lived in connection with both inner values and the world around him. Over time, Michael discovered a delicate but resilient balance among family, health, work, faith, and community, each element reinforcing the others in a way that brought coherence to a life once fractured by singular focus. The laughter at the dinner table, the quiet conversations with his spouse, the shared meals with parents, the satisfaction of meaningful work, and the moments of reflection and service combined to form a rhythm that was at once energizing and restorative. He realized that this equilibrium was not a destination but an ongoing practice, a conscious alignment of actions with purpose, and that the journey itself carried its own profound rewards. In this renewed life, Michael found a sense of fulfillment that had long eluded him, a quiet joy grounded not in wealth or accolades but in presence, connection, and purpose. Each day offered an opportunity to honor the commitments that truly mattered, to nurture relationships, and to live in harmony with both his own well-being and the needs of those he loved. In reconnecting with his daughter, wife, parents, and himself, he discovered that the true measure of a life well lived was not defined by what was accumulated, but by the depth of care, attention, and intention invested in the people, health, and community that gave life its enduring meaning. And in this understanding, he finally felt whole. Michael had always perceived time as something endless, a resource so abundant that he could postpone reflection, pause relationships, and defer care until a future that seemed perpetually distant. Yet the quiet deterioration of his father's health shattered that illusion with startling clarity. The once strong figure who had guided him through childhood and celebrated every milestone now moved with measured effort, a frailty that demanded attention and revealed the impermanence Michael had long ignored. Watching his father struggle with tasks that had once been effortless, Michael felt a profound mixture of sorrow and urgency, a recognition that life's most precious moments could vanish before they were fully cherished. This confrontation with mortality was neither dramatic nor sudden, but quietly insistent, a daily reminder that waiting for the right time to engage in love, care, and presence was an illusion that robbed him of the richness of now. He began to see the subtle ways in which his pursuit of wealth and status had distracted him from experiences that truly mattered. A shared laugh, the warmth of a hand held in reassurance, the unhurried conversation at a dinner table, or the simple pleasure of being fully attentive to another human being. These moments, previously overshadowed by meetings, deadlines, and the constant noise of ambition, now stood out in stark contrast to the years of distraction and postponement. Each visit to his father's side became a meditation on presence, a conscious decision to listen without agenda, to participate in life fully without the need for productivity to validate his worth. Michael realized that intentionality was not an abstract concept but a practice embedded in the small, consistent acts of noticing, responding, and caring, and that these acts carried far more value than any accumulation of material wealth ever could. As he immersed himself in these moments, Michael also confronted his own mortality and the impermanence of time itself, understanding that the clock was indifferent to ambition and achievements, that no amount of money could extend or reclaim the hours he had let slip by. This awareness transformed his approach to relationships, work, and daily routines, infusing even the simplest interactions with significance. Conversations with his father became opportunities not just for reminiscence but for learning and legacy, for appreciating the depth of shared history and the unspoken lessons embedded in years of experience. Michael observed how patience, empathy, and presence enriched both his father's remaining days and his own sense of purpose, creating a bond strengthened not by grand gestures but by the constancy of attentive care and mindful engagement. The lessons from this intimate confrontation reverberated through every aspect of his life. At home, he approached his daughter and wife with renewed attention, no longer allowing distractions to diminish the value of time spent together, savoring small triumphs and ordinary joys as if they were rare treasures. In work, he sought meaning over mere profit, aligning efforts with contributions that resonated with his values and had tangible impact on others' lives, recognizing that a life invested in purpose was richer than one measured in currency. Even in moments of solitude, Michael found depth in reflection, gratitude, and mindful presence, understanding that the quality of attention he gave to life itself shaped the fulfillment he could experience. Ultimately, the fragility of his father became a mirror for Michael's own priorities and mortality, clarifying that time is finite and that wealth is only valuable insofar as it supports the life one truly desires to lead. By embracing intentional living, fully present in each encounter and committed to nurturing love, health, and purpose, he discovered a richness that no bank account could provide, a fulfillment that came not from what he possessed but from how deeply he engaged with the fleeting, precious gift of life itself. In witnessing the slow decline of someone he loved dearly, Michael understood that the most enduring legacy was not wealth or status, but the attention, care, and intentional presence invested in those we hold close. And it was in this awareness that his life found authentic meaning and lasting depth. As Michael reflected on the journey that had brought him to this point, he understood with unshakable clarity that the true measure of a life well lived was not reflected in bank statements, luxury cars, or accolades, but in the depth of connection he nurtured, the intentionality with which he engaged each day, and the purpose that guided his actions. The countless hours once consumed by ambition now felt like lessons in disguise, teaching him that wealth could never replace love, that success without presence was hollow, and that a life focused solely on accumulation risked leaving the heart and soul impoverished. He came to appreciate that legacy was not built in isolation, nor was it quantified by material gain. It was cultivated in laughter shared across the dinner table, the quiet comfort of supporting someone in need, the guidance offered to those who sought direction, and the consistent practice of aligning one's actions with meaningful values. Armed with this newfound perspective, Michael began to channel his experience into mentorship, sharing with others the wisdom he had earned through struggle, regret, and redemption. He spoke openly about the dangers of defining oneself purely through financial achievement and illustrated the transformative power of living deliberately, balancing work with relationships, health, personal growth, and community engagement. His story became a beacon for those who felt trapped in the endless pursuit of more, encouraging them to pause, reassess, and recognize that true fulfillment arose not from what one had, but from how fully one embraced life, nurtured others, and contributed to something larger than oneself. Michael emphasized that every choice carried weight, that time was the most precious currency, and that the small, consistent efforts to be present and purposeful ultimately composed the richest legacy one could leave behind. Through his mentorship, Michael witnessed subtle but profound transformations in those he guided. He saw parents rediscovering joy in daily moments with their children, professionals reevaluating priorities to create healthier work-life balances, and individuals reconnecting with passions and causes that had long been neglected. These ripples of impact reinforced for Michael the truth he now lived by, a life oriented toward relationships, presence, and purpose radiates beyond the self, cultivating a community of care and intention that endures far longer than wealth ever could. In sharing his story, he found not only personal redemption but also a deeper sense of fulfillment, knowing that his journey could inspire others to live with awareness, compassion, and meaning. And so, as Michael's days unfolded, each filled with mindful engagement, laughter, and connection, he embodied the lessons he had fought so hard to learn. The once empty victories of his past now served as a testament to growth, a reminder of the dangers of misaligned priorities, and a foundation upon which he built a life rich in love, presence, and purpose. From his story, viewers are invited to reflect on their own lives, to consider the balance between ambition and attention, and to recognize that fulfillment is cultivated through conscious choices, nurtured relationships, and meaningful contributions. Thank you so much for joining this journey. If you found value in Michael's story, do not forget to like, subscribe, and share this channel so we can continue exploring stories that inspire, educate,